my God, why have you abandoned me? Why are you so far away when I groan for help? Good Friday. Good Friday. You know, I've always struggled with calling this day good. I mean, if I put myself in the sandals of the disciples who witnessed the events, who lived through the pain, the disciples who had to have felt the things that we've been talking about this past week in these daily videos, I'm fairly certain they would not have called this day good. From Monday on our video, they would have felt the groan rising up from their soul when their Messiah, at least who they thought was their Messiah, was crucified. From Tuesday, our video, they had to have felt to some degree that the Father, maybe even Jesus himself, had abandoned them. He had called them to drop everything in life and follow him, and now he was hanging on a cross. From our conversation on Wednesday, the disciples had to have felt why and the why of lamenting, the unanswered whys as they mourned deeply what they thought was going to be. Man, I tell you what, they would have faced so many unanswered questions that day. From the video yesterday, Thursday, I imagine the disciples felt pain. Physical, emotional, spiritual, that pain that we talked about. Pain so deep that it ached. It felt like a weight crushing their chests. If I put myself in the sandals of the disciples, feet caked with the dust of walking the roads of Galilee with Jesus, I'm not so sure I would have called this day good. And if I can be candid and honest with you, I've wondered if what we've been wrestling through this week could be called good. I mean, speaking bluntly, my fear has been that as I've pushed, encouraged, prodded you to think about the why questions that you have in life, the why questions that have not been, most likely are not now, and doubtful they will ever be answered on this side of eternity, I've struggled this week, pushing each of us to ask these questions, fearing that some of us may choose to walk away, to say we've had enough of the unanswered whys, and we choose to turn our backs on God. How can asking such questions be good? I've sat with this unsettled in my soul. And I've read through Psalm 22 each day like I've been asking you guys to. And I want you to know what hit me just this week in reading the words of the psalmist. You want to know what I found to be good in this psalm? Here it is. Just because we ask why, that doesn't mean we're walking away from the faith. Let me say that again. Because this was the good that I found in Psalm 22. Just because we ask why, it does not mean we are walking away from God. We can ask why and still hold on. Even if it doesn't seem like our grip is very strong, we can ask why and still believe the truths that we know deep down within us. We can weep, mourn, yell, verbally vomit on the Father, and we can still trust deep down what we know to be true. That is the good that I see in this psalm. And I see that clearly in Psalm 22. We begin in verse 1 and 2, the verses that have started and finished our videos this past week, and I'll paraphrase what they say. The psalmist says, "Why abandon me, Lord? Why have you done that? Why are you so far away when I call to you? I call, but you don't answer. You hear my voice, but I get no relief." Those are the questions, the unanswered whys. This is the pain brewing in the psalmist. But then we see the psalmist returning to the truths he knows, the truths that he was taught. Verses 3 through 5. "Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you rescued them. They cried out to you and were saved. They trusted in you and were never disgraced." Those are the deep truths the author knows to be true. But immediately after this, the writer jumps back into the pain and the questions in verses 6 to 8. Again, me paraphrasing, the author cries out, "I'm worthless, I'm scorned, I'm mocked, I'm sneered at, I'm belittled, and everyone is sarcastically yelling at me to call on you. But Father, would you even answer if I did?" I mean, I hear more whys in these three verses. Like verse 8, I hear the author saying, without saying, "Would you even rescue me if I called out?" Oh, wait, I already feel abandoned, Lord. So is the psalmist ready to walk away? To leave the faith? No, he's not. Because even in his pain, his torment, the churning of his soul, what does he return to? Verse 9, paraphrased. He says, from the beginning of me, I've been taught to trust in you. In my mother's arms, all the way back to there, even then I was yours. And we go to verse 10. The psalmist says, I was thrust into your arms at my birth. You have been my God from the moment I was born. You see, friends, in the middle of all the questions, stuck in the muck and the mess and the mire, what does the psalmist keep returning to? Who does the psalmist keep returning to? Verse 11, do not stay so far away from me, for trouble is near, and no one else can help me. The author is still holding on to his belief system. But whatever fingertip grip the psalmist had on the truths of his faith, it does not take away the pain. You see that in verses 12 to 18. Again, I'm paraphrasing. The author says, I'm surrounded by my enemies. The pain is palpable. I'm literally falling apart, melting away. I'm done. My strength is gone. And catch this. Don't miss this part at the end of verse 15. The author says, you have laid me in the dust and left me for dead. Even in the times of returning to a sort of confident hope of his childhood faith, the psalmist is not above telling God how he sees it. He says, you are doing this to me. Father, you are. Look around me. There's packs of dogs surrounding me. They're piercing my hands and my feet. See my bones. See them stare, gloat, gamble for my clothes. Friends, if I'm in the shoes of the psalmist right now, I'm packing my bags and I'm leaving. But that's not what the psalmist does. On verse 19, the psalmist says, O Lord, do not stay far away. You are my strength. Come quickly to my aid. Are you seeing the good in here, friends? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Boy, I tell you what, I needed to see this today. I needed to be reminded that I can still yell why at God, and I can still feel abandoned and abused and left out in the dark. I can still feel those things without walking away from the Father, without walking away from God. The author of the New International Commentary on the Old Testament says something profound about the beginning of this section of the Psalm. She writes this: the first 21 verses have an alternating structure. The prayer moves from a cry lifted to God into a section of trust. But there is no transition between these sections explaining the change in expression, leaving the hearer, the reader, to decide how the move is made. This structure, then, is disjointed, possibly reflecting the emotional turmoil that a faithful person undergoes as he or she tries to make sense of suffering and pain, and even attacks from others with a belief in a powerful and loving God. There is a both and in this psalm. Both pain, torment, questions, and somehow still an underlying trust in a powerful and loving God. First Church, I'm not trying to sugarcoat what we've been talking about this week. I'm simply saying that on this Friday, as I sit here in an empty sanctuary, on this Friday, I can somehow say that it is good to ask the whys that I have deep within me. And I can ask them knowing that I'm not walking away. I'm not leaving the God of my childhood. I'm not abandoning the truths I somehow still deep down know to be true. I needed to hear that message today, as it gives me the freedom to keep asking why. Today is Good Friday. And even in my questions, my unanswered questions of why, today those questions can be called good. Friends, keep asking. Keep sitting with the Father, even if he remains silent today. Keep feeling the tension in a day we celebrate, calling it good, when 2,000 years ago, nothing at all seemed to be good about it. Today as you sit, listen for the echoes of a psalmist crying, why? And yet holding on for dear life for the truth that he knew. And listen for the echoes of our Savior calling out that same thing. My God, why have you abandoned me? Why are you so far away when I groan for help?